Good evening, blog viewers. We're going to continue on our video post today, and today we're going to look at Nietzsche, Alexander Nehamas's Life as Literature book, which is Nehamas's central work on Nietzsche, describing his views on what actually unifies what to many people is an absolutely ununifiable philosophy, which is Nietzsche's. But Nehamas makes a very strong attempt to unify core themes of Nietzsche's philosophy, and I put up the quotes that are relevant to today's post in the blog, but I won't, as with last time, I'm not going to read them specifically in the post. So to continue with the post today, I'd like to start with two thought experiments. The first one is, imagine that NASA or some government agency somewhere wants to create a better photographic image of the Earth from space. We want to get a better image than we previously had. And to do so, it spends two space probes, not just one, but sends two space probes, one to Venus, the planet Venus, and another to the planet Mars, Venus being closer to the Sun, Mars being further away from the Sun, but both sort of on both planets there you can see the Earth with these probes. Obviously they're different views, they're not the same view of the Earth. You're not seeing exactly the same thing. It's one object, but obviously different views from different vantage points. And the one that's sent to Mars has a far more advanced camera, much more precise and much more powerful in general, in almost every way. Both of these probes, they do have cameras, and they're both constantly aimed at the Earth. They're not looking at anything else. So they're not looking at the Sun. They're not taking a break to look at Jupiter. They're constantly aimed at the Earth. And they're taking pictures, let's say at 5 a minute. They're taking 5 pictures every minute, and they just continue to take pictures. In totality, they both take thousands of pictures. No picture, though, is of enough zoomed in enough to see any persons or houses or cars or anything specific on the Earth. They're just big pictures of the globe. And so if you were, let's think about this for a minute, if you were in charge of, let's say you were at this government agency and you were supervising this project and you got all the pictures, how would you go about determining which pictures you were going to use? What are you going to do with these pictures to come up with a better photographic image of the Earth? And I think it's when you think about it a little bit, it's you can come up with some pretty good ideas pretty quickly as to how you would come about using these pictures. And the first would be to give preference to the pictures taken with the better camera, with the better tool, with the better lens. It's got more accuracy to it. So you would want to sort of give a initial preference to that camera. You would probably want to supplement the gaps, times when it wasn't taking pictures, or any weaknesses in the stronger camera's vantage point, with pictures taken with the weaker camera. For example, it may have had a better perspective at certain times. It may have, while generally having less precise tools, it may have had certain advantages over the other camera, even though it generally had less precise set of tools. So you'd want to supplement the gaps with the weaker camera. You'd also want to throw out, from either one, you'd want to throw out any sort of blurry pictures that were taken, blurry, sort of imprecise pictures that you can't really make out the Earth for whatever reason on either camera. So those just get thrown out. And finally, the ultimate goal is, when you're doing this project, is you want to produce a better picture of the Earth. You don't want to just create a picture similar to all those that you already have, because then the project is kind of pointless. It's not pushing things forward. It's just redoing what's already been done. And at that point, you're not really adding anything to the field of knowledge. You're just redoing what's been done. So the goal always, the end, the purpose of this is to come up with a better picture than has ever existed. Before leaving this thought experiment, going to the second thought experiment, one thing that's important to point out is that all the pictures that are taken are all real They're of something that really happened within reality. There's the Earth, there's these other planets that this probe stands on, there's a real camera, there's real pictures being taken of the Earth. None of these probes are creating anything like a human mind-made nothingness, which we've talked about. Conceptions that exist only within the human mind, illusions that exist only within the mind. These probes can't do that. They can only take and observe minutely a reality and take pictures of reality and freeze reality for our observation. But they're only concerned with reality. They're not concerned with things that are not a reality. And the pictures, because they're not giving you enough detail to see the human beings or cars or whatever on there, they can't give you, you have to take them, you have to understand what you're getting. So you're getting a very beautiful picture of a beautiful planet, which is the Earth, which is very beautiful from space. You see the endless blue, the white of the clouds, the land masses, a gorgeous picture, but you're not seeing any of the minutiae of the Earth. So you're not seeing sort of the human evil that exists on the Earth, the human imperfections. You're not seeing the human foolish decisions. You're not seeing any of the bad stuff that human beings have to deal with in a day-to-day life. So you're not getting that. You're just seeing the beauty of the natural environment. Now, if you can run a very similar experiment, just sort of changing a little bit of the parameters, but sort of the same point. And since it's baseball season, I'll give a baseball analogy. And let's say your job is you're a major league GM and you're trying to scout a certain pitcher to see if you should get him and sign him to a contract. And so you already have a scouting report, but you want to determine if you can create a better one, if you can get a perfected scouting report, if you want to call it. So you hire two scouts. And you hire two scouts to go watch this pitcher pitch, and you obviously put them at different sort of parts of the ballpark, so they have different views of the pitcher and what's going on. And you observe the pitcher, and you ask these two scouts to observe the pitcher from different seats, using different sort of tools. You give them different tools of scouting, and these scouts have different levels of experience. One is sort of a second-year guy, and he's really not had a track record of identifying anyone great. The other is a guy that's this other scout has had maybe 20 years of experience and has found many all-star pitchers. And the question would be, at this point, the scouts go to the game, they give you the reports, and you get the different reports from the scouts. And what are you going to do here? Just similar to the space analogy with the Earth. What are you going to do what are you going to do with these reports? And I think very similarly, you're going to go through basically the same process, which is to give a preference to the scout with better tools and more experience. You're going to try to supplement whatever he gave you with maybe some good findings from the scout with the lesser experience, supplement the gaps. And you're going to throw out any sort of blurry, imprecise language used from either scout. If either scout says they thought the pitcher was nice, or if they thought he was cool or had a cool demeanor, what does that really mean? It's not really useful. So you're going to want to throw out some of the really vague and imprecise language that is used to describe the pitcher. Or even vague or imprecise observations on the gun, that, for example, the speed gun, and you can't quite make out the speeds. You're going to throw out that stuff. And again, the ultimate goal is you're going to use all of this stuff only if you think you can create a better scatter, a more comprehensive, a more logical, a more detailed, and more true scouting report than you already had. If you don't feel like what you got from these two reports was useful, then there's no point to do anything with them. You might as well just stick with your current scouting report. And so the problem or the issue of both of these, what we're realizing in both of these examples is the problem, which I think Niehaus talks about extensively in Life as Literature, and the problem that we deal with all the time, which is how do you ever get to know a thing? or a person or an object or the definition of anything, or a human virtue, or what it means to have a human virtue, any of those things. And I think the point is, similar to these examples, is probably the best way to do it. We can learn a lot from these two examples as to literally anything, but specifically for our discussion, how to gain better knowledge of the human virtues. And I think part of them is what we can learn from these examples is I jotted down eight specific points. And the first is that the perfected definition of the human virtues must always remain non-final and incomplete. Since reality is always never stopping, never taking a break from producing what I would say is an infinite amount of information about that could be useful to human life or the life of any other creature. Reality is never stopping from creating this information. You can't ever have a final or complete definition of any of the virtues. Because just as you are about to put a complete definition or final definition of it, there'd literally be the next day or month or year, there'd be an infinity of new information created, an infinity of changes in the environment which could vary the definition of the human virtues from what you've already come up with. So you have to remain in a non-final orientation. Going back to the examples, and you can see this even in the examples, the probes were not taking pictures constantly, so there was something they were always missing, because they weren't taking pictures nanosecond to nanosecond. They were taking 5 a minute. Even if they were doing 30 a minute, there would still be gaps. There would be things that they weren't taking a picture at every moment, so there would be a gap. They could easily have missed something. Same with the scouts. They could have been distracted by a phone call or just dozed off for a couple minutes and missed something in the game. So there's always a gap between what total reality produces, the sum total of information or the sum total of experience that reality produces as to anything, any event or any item of knowledge, and our ability to capture. There's always a gap, and we're not going to capture all of what reality produces. Certainly the human species can't, because the human species is limited in what it can observe. We can create tools like space probes and things that expand it, but there's always going to be a limit as to how much we can observe. So similarly, our definitions of things have to be non-final. Despite that, though, despite there being a total non-finalness to the whole project, I still think you can say that each generation over time can improve upon the last generation's definition. And that's the whole point. The whole point is to improve upon the prior generation's definition of the virtues or definition of any other important thing that matters. And it's not just to redo. It's not just to produce the same output. It's not just to produce the same thoughts. It's not just to reiterate and regurgitate the same thoughts, but it's to improve and make better. And the point of improving, again, you see it right in the word, it's not also just to create something new. It's not just to create something different. It's to create something better, because newness and differentness can be bad. And so the point is to create a good newness and a good differentness rather than just some form of newness or differentness. 3, you can see it's hard work. The picture in the scouting example, there needs to be constant attention to the task. And same with the probes, you don't have that example as much, but the problem is much because they're they have no choice but to keep taking pictures. But it's hard work to design the probes, and it's hard work to get the probes to the planets. Same thing with the scouts. And so you need good tools, and you need to be looking in the right direction. You need to be focused on reality in both examples, and you need to care about the issue. You need to care about producing something that's better. That needs to motivate you rather than wanting to do the same thing and produce the same output. 4, many perspectives you can have, certainly. You can have many pictures, you can have many types of tools that are observing the picture, many different observational analyses that you can make, many different fields you can rely on. You can perhaps, if the picture is willing, even conduct psychological profiles, do whatever seems right at the time. But all of these perspectives are grounded in what I would call observable, detectable, and measurable reality, with all of these terms very broadly understood. So while many perspectives are welcome and many perspectives help, each perspective has a firm grounding within reality, within observable, detectable, and measurable reality. Once you pass beyond that point, you pass beyond the bright line, you get into the world of nothing, and you're not observing reality accurately, because you can't observe reality from the perspective of nothing. It has to be from the perspective of everything, and using tools that are facilitating the observation of everything, the one everything that we've talked about. 5, it's obviously not the work of one man. In both cases, there was 2, and there should be probably way more than 2. So it's the work of this sort of project. Each man has sort of gaps, blind spots, and vulnerabilities, weaknesses in his mental and other observational skills. And so this sort of work is the work of certainly more than one person. And the more, I would think, the better. 6, the best way to improve, I think, on any certain perspective is to take the strengths of each perspective, and supplement its weak points with strengths from another perspective. So you basically take all the strengths and you continue to pile up the strengths with each other, and hopefully some of the strengths from one perspective supplement and add to or make up for the weaknesses of the other's perspective. And so, just to give an example, if philosophy has in general, the philosophic tradition has done a very solid job of describing and defining the virtue of courage, but has been very weak on the virtue of love, you might want to look to psychology or literature or some other field to define love. And you might not want to look at them as much for courage, because you have a very strong definition of courage from the philosophical tradition. You may still want to you still can improve upon it, but you may look more toward the other areas for supplementation of what the philosophic tradition has been unable to produce. 7th, each generation's virtue should be each generation's articulation of the virtues should still be unified by some dominant themes. There should be some sort of something holding it together. It shouldn't be a total hodgepodge. Just as, again, the observations of the scouts should be of the one pitcher, there should be some sort of progression to their thoughts. It shouldn't be totally random or chaotic. Same thing with the pictures of the planet. They should be always focusing on the Earth. The probe should not be taking pictures of other planets for any reason. And so the same thing here. The definition of the virtues, while they can be have specific in specifics, they can in specific formulations they can obviously differ and be subject to certain open questions. But there should still be some dominant themes, dominant priorities that you can sort of trace to almost all the definitions, all the virtues, and sort of unifies the generations, in some very broad sense, unifies the generation's focus. I think that's important from preventing a definition of the virtues or definition of anything to become just sort of a mishmash, a hodgepodge of just random, disconnected, imprecise, totally contradictory, conflicting, and basically which is the sum of all of those things, useless definition of the virtues. Finally, I think you should consider the views and perhaps initially start with the views of some authorities or some past authorities, but certainly can't end there. You can't abdicate to them. If you're going to accept their ideas, you have to do it on your own terms. You have to do it based on present reality. You have to do it based on personal reasons that you think are still valid, or personal knowledge that you've gained in some way, or knowledge that's still being produced. You have to show it's contemporary. You have to show it's still relevant to people's lives, and it's not just responding to some past issue or was written at some past time that doesn't at all respond to the present reality. So if you're going to consider the views of Nietzsche or Plato or whoever, you have to do so always in an attempt to ground it within present reality, present problems, and present concerns. And even if you do that, you're never stopping with those thinkers, but you're constantly adding to it, supplementing it, refining it, making up for the weak points, and ultimately producing something new and better than what was produced. So I think in that sense is you can proceed upon the task of intellectual humility, and not in the sense that you just say everything is equal, every view is equal, and let's all be humble, but more that you're humble in the hopes of increasing your knowledge and increasing your base from starting out with acceptance of your own weaknesses, but looking always to supplement and improve it. And so I think with that we'll conclude today's post. Bye-bye.